My name is Adam Brand. I'm a member of the British Institute of Graphologists. I spend a lot of my time with recruitment work or forensic work, which is working for solicitors to see whether or not a signature has been forged. There are two main uses for handwriting analysis. One is forensic, and the other is for personality. And graphology is usually the name used for handwriting analysis when one is looking at the person's personality from the handwriting. I spent most of my career in business, and it's always been an interest, handwriting, ever since I was a child. So I have done it in parallel with my business career, but took it up professionally full-time when I retired. So I've been doing it now for a number of years, to put it mildly, but it is a fascinating subject that everybody should try and get some understanding for, because if you can see somebody's writing, you can immediately get a feel for the sort of person you are dealing with. Now, obviously, people don't write as much now with iPhones and computers as they used to, but if you ever see anybody's writing, you can, for instance, divide writing into angular writing, curved writing, thready writing, and that immediately tells how you can deal with them. If somebody has very angular writing, you can't start talking about yourself. There's somebody who wants to get on with things. They just want to do it. They want to take action.
Okay.
If you has very curved writing, it's somebody that wants to know whether you're going to be friendly, whether they can work with you. And so there are different ways you can approach people when you see their writing.
I've been told that when you do capital letters, you're like shouting at the paper, and when you're doing normal letters, you're not shouting, you're calm and relaxed. Is that true? And why is that?
There is a lot of truth in that, but basically, when you're shouting at somebody, what you're doing is putting a capital letter in the wrong place. So in other words, you might have a word that should be spelt with the lowercase letters, and suddenly there is a capital letter in the middle. Now that is a sudden explosion, unnecessary explosion, where you are tending to shout at somebody. But in terms of shouting at somebody, it's not so much capital letters, because capital letters are often used by people who say, I have to write this way because my writing is so illegible. Capital letters don't always mean that you're shouting. What often means that you're shouting is that you underline words unnecessarily. So you suddenly find somebody who has written something to you, and they put 3 lines under a word. Now that is more likely to be somebody who is shouting than somebody who's writing in capital letters.
Is there a lower demand for graphology nowadays, or is it more popular?
In terms of demand for it, it is not as popular as when everybody wrote with pens and pencils. Now they write with iPhones and computers, so it's not as popular as it used to be. However, handwriting analysis is very strong in the legal area, where they are still having to check on signatures at the land registry. I mean, I've had cases where houses have been taken off people because somebody has forged a signature at the land registry. But in terms of personality, which is the main aspect in terms of graphology, it is being used in recruitment purely because you cannot look at writing and see anything about the background, the sex of the person, the age of the person, the race of the person. It is totally neutral, and therefore companies find it very useful because you're looking at the individual aspects of a person.
During the COVID-19 lockdown, I know you had lots of clients used to go out, and challenges and barriers did you have? Did you have to do it face-to-face, or did you have to do it online, Zoom, or how did it affect your business?
Well, it's very much done online. The point about looking at an original document is you can feel the pressure, which tells you about a person's willpower, their commitment to getting a job done. When you see their handwriting on a screen, it's not so easy to see the pressure and the fluency of the stroke, and that is a very vital part of somebody's writing. So what happened during lockdown is it all went on screen. It is far better to look at writing with the person not being there, because then you're not confused by their personality in front of you. you see it totally objectively from the writing on the paper. So it's not necessarily a good thing ever to meet the author of the writing that you're looking at. The lockdown only affected the situation if people were unhappy about posting material, so they just sent it by scan. But that's fine. I mean, I do most of my work from scanned documents sent on the internet.
There's something, I don't know if you've heard, called pages. So basically when you're in a group, or if you're designing something and something's on for a couple of minutes, like in a sheet or something, like a relaxed type of melody or like a bed, and then after that the music stops and then you start writing, scribbling or whatever. Have you ever tried doing that yourself to release stress or mental health as well?
In terms of the stress and mental health question, there is a whole school of graphology whereby people use handwriting exercises to help them. It's very well known in France, whereby people are shown that if they raise their T-bar or increase the width of the spacing between their words, it can help them in certain situations. Now, for instance, the T-bar is often a sign of one's self-esteem. If the T-bar is very low, in other words, the T-bar is the same height as an M or an N, the graphotherapy approach is to try and get people to lift that T-bar, and it does help in an indirect way on their self-esteem. And another issue is if one's word spacing is very wide, in other words, you're saying, I need a lot of space to myself, if you close up the word spacing, that also has an effect on you. So graphotherapy is a very strong tool because it can help. And one of the most famous things to do is to write what are known as propellers. In other words, it looks like an F, and you calmly do this F over and over again, connect together, and that is believed to be quite a calming movement. And the other thing is that people say that after a stroke, what you ought to be doing is counting buttons or marbles in a jar. Actually, what they have found is the best thing after a stroke is to get people to practice their signature, because that is a very helpful way of calming them down, getting their mind working, going back to something that was something they've done all their lives. And so there is a tremendous advantage in writing generally. And of course, we do know that writing has tremendous importance in terms of taking notes by students. It helps their memory. Learning to write carefully is very important for if you want to become a doctor or a dentist or a surgeon. The ability to hold a pen is very important among children, because it's something they can develop for later careers, like using a surgical knife and so on. So writing has tremendous importance in brain development. Now, it's the difference between hitting a triangle when you're hitting a keyboard and playing a violin when you are writing with a pen. The effect on your brain is quite considerable in terms of its development. And therefore it's incredibly important that although children are using keyboards, that they also learn to write carefully. It does have a tremendous important effect on their brain. Teaching children to write clearly has slightly dropped off the agenda. I think it's coming back because children are being given things called pen licenses. In other words, when they learn to write well, they get a license which they can be very proud of. But the point about learning to write as a child, they've done work in Canada that shows that children that are taught young to connect their letters, it's a sign of sort of more logical thinking than breaking them up in printing style, has a tremendous impact on their ability to read well and, funnily enough, to be sociable with their friends and colleagues. Learning cursive writing as a child and doing it well is incredibly important. And I'm afraid because people are all being taught to type and use iPhones, this has slightly fallen down in terms of importance in school teaching.
Do you think it's given a big disadvantage for people that are now doing it more on phones, tablets, or AI assistive technology devices?
It is a disadvantage because they're losing out on that brain development. But what I would say to your listeners is, if you are students or if you have children who are university students, that it very much better to take a student note by handwriting rather than putting notes on a phone. They have done a lot of studies to show that impact on the memory is much stronger when you handwrite things than when you type them. So that would be my last message. Please don't give up handwriting. It is a tremendously important skill in everybody's lives.
Have you released any new graphology designs or artists that people can go and have a look, or when is your next release that you're doing graphology design?
If people want to know more about graphology, they should go on to britishgraphology.org, which is the website for the Institute of British Graphologists. And on that it has a lot of articles, it has illustrations, it has courses if people want to learn more. While there has been lockdown, all the meetings have been over Zoom. There are meetings in the north and in London, and so people can get more involved if they are interested by looking at that website. I've got a job on with the British Virgin Islands, funnily enough, doing a recruitment job, whereby they have people coming into the company, and it's growing, and they are wanting to look at the individual differences between people, which you don't necessarily get with psychometric tests. The thing about graphology, though it is an art, you can pick up the distinctive differences between people that can help in recruitment. But then, of course, it's also used for people thinking about getting married, because you can see whether two people will get on or whether there might be problems. So that's another use for graphology, and also in helping children who may have problems at school, and also helping people who are thinking about changing their career, because the handwriting can explain to them, look, the sort of skills and potential you have from your writing suggests you should be going in this direction. There's a lot of things you can learn from handwriting. 3
best tips that you would give to any person, any child, adult, person, client, colleague, anyone.
Try and hold the pen or pencil carefully. Now what you see is people hold the pen between their first and second fingers. They don't hold it as if it was a feather or a paintbrush. The best way of writing, you want to be sitting up straight with the paper flat. You don't want to be curling over. You want to have that pen between your first finger and your thumb rather than holding it in a claw structure, because that will help the fluency of your writing. My last tip would be to try and find out the best way of holding your pen to give you fluency of writing, because that has a very good impact on you in every sense of the word. My website is adam.brand@virgin.net. So that's adam.brand@virgin.net, and I'd be very happy to reply to any questions they have. adam.brand@virgin.net.